I'm Rob Lucuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Dixie Chassay, Casting Director on The Great. You know what, Dixie, when I asked Tony McNamara why season 2 felt like he really ups the ante, he said it's because he was able to push the show further and take more risks. And I'm just wondering, what did you feel like when you started production on season 2 all those months ago? How did it feel to come back to something a bit more familiar? Did you also feel like you could maybe push the envelope?
100%. I felt like we kind of knew what this thing was, and although we didn't know where it could journey to, it felt very live. It felt like it'd been given a really good, strong base, and that the response was excellent, and therefore we could really play around. And also I think we all knew one another better, which is always an advantage, because it means you're straight in with the shorthand and you can be playful. And we were also in the pandemic, we were in the lockdown, so that kind of in a way welded everybody at the same time as throwing new obstacles and things that we had to sort of navigate around.
So how does the pandemic, I mean, it's so massive. It's affected so many productions. Everyone I speak to tells me how difficult things were. How does it affect the casting director's job on a series like this?
Well, I think universally it's affected casting in that it's moved it vastly online, and means that, for example, one didn't meet anyone physically. Which we've been doing a lot more of as casting has become way more global, and the outreach has become much wider. But it just kind of completely condensed that and made the world of Zoom, you know, what we're doing right now, being able to kind of meet and connect, and that to feel more kind of comfortable and legitimate.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
I mean, what are the upsides and downsides of casting remotely? Because obviously you can cast a wider net, you can do it without too much fuss, but of course you don't get to have that interaction in person with that person. And did you find that to be more challenging for you?
I think that human contact is essential, and I think that we've become a bit depraved and deprived if we don't actually physically spend time with other human beings. We miss nuances and we miss stuff. But I think that as a casting director, you've spent so much time learning who people are and getting to know people through screen that strangely it's quite transferable, and you're probably more set up for it than, you know, people functioning outside of that that role, that job. But yes, it's important to connect. And I actually historically have always liked meeting an actor, having a cup of tea, getting to know them as a person, and then perhaps leaning into the kind of taping, using the internet to get their readings, because I feel like I know them really well. And often if they're international or they're traveling, that's been a huge advantage.
Yeah. I always ask this with casting directors. I imagine you have to wade through hundreds and hundreds of you know, resumes and whatever you want to call it, and headshots, and sometimes, you know, just for one role. And so someone like yourself, I feel like you've probably virtually seen it all when it comes to actors standing out from the crowd to land a role. What would you say are some of the do's and don'ts for auditioning actors?
Do you mean for actors putting themselves on tape and sending us an audition?
Yeah. Like, what's a really good tape where you're just like, that person really nailed it? And what are some of the ones where you're just like, you failed miserably?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think there's such a thing, because I always come back to this. I think as a casting director, we often don't know what we're looking for, and we're responding to spontaneity and surprise. And that doesn't mean that actors need to be spontaneous and surprising. It's an energetic thing. It's how do we interpret this role? What do we see in this person that aligns with the way this character could be portrayed? What is that thing? And I think we're searching as much as looking for something. So my advice always to actors is just do what feels right and is your interpretation, because then if it doesn't work out, you can put your head on the pillow at night and go, well, I did what I thought was right. And in the end, I always feel like when we look at tapes, if there's something in that tape, but maybe it's not right for this role, we will circle back. It's much more for me about responding to somebody's flavor, sensibility, energetics, than trying to match something with something.
Wow. See, that I think that's a misconception then about casting directors, because we see it on TV shows when an actor walks into a room and they're standing there and it's all kind of terrifying. So, but I mean, how difficult can it be though to find the right person for the right role? Because if the casting's off, the whole thing just goes pear-shaped. It doesn't work. And so a lot of the pressure, I'm sorry to say, is on you and making sure that you're finding the right people for the right role. And is it a science? Is it just who knows what? Talk me through that challenge.
I think it's the mystery of the magic of show business. It's understanding the material, connecting with the material, and then listening and hearing the director's vision and doing the due diligence, and somewhere in that finding things that are exciting and expressive. And something that I'm always interested in is the truth, and also exploring and breaking kind of traditional thinking, busting narratives that we're told, which just means being engaged with the world. I think it's just about looking. It's about looking not at the immediate, but what's behind the immediate, and seeing what resonates. So I don't know if there's ever a perfect, I've got a handful of stories of actors that maybe were cast or about to be cast, and then for whatever reason fell away, and then they were replaced quite quickly. And often that is a magical combination. And that anecdote is like, gosh, we were about to do that thing and we ended up with that thing. So
wow,
it's a journey without sounding,
yeah, I know, because you hear about an actor saying, I read for that role, but I ended up with that role. And I just think we see what production designers do, and we see the costumes and we see the visual effects, but what the casting director does, it's so early on, usually in production. And of course, you keep working as the episodes progress. To me, it just seems like a really difficult thing to get right. And obviously when you do get it right, amazing. But there's a lot of pressure, I guess, was what I'm saying, on your job. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've just started production on season 3. Who the hell knows where you're going to end up? I mean, and all the new characters that you've got to cast. Let's actually go back to season 2 and think about some of the real highlights. Obviously, you get to bring on someone of the caliber of Gillian Anderson. She's a multi-Emmy winning legend. Has been acting for many, many years. And I mean, from what the other actors told me, just the thought of having her come on set was so exciting, and she brought such an energy. Can you talk us through the process that you and Tony came up with to get her to play the role of Joanna, because she's so brilliant in The Great?
Yeah, no, she's absolutely wonderful and multifaceted, and it was very exciting. And I think she was somebody everybody felt was a really good fit from the outset. And then we sort of talked around a number of wonderful actors and just kept circling back. So then it's about, really the challenge on a series like this, and particularly The Great, is that we don't have scripts. So we're normally getting them about 2 weeks before the current block is filming. So, and sometimes, everyone's rigorously in the writing room kind of developing characters and writing up a storm. So sometimes a lot comes at us and sometimes less comes at us. So particularly with a role like that, we've got to cast without the script. So it's a huge amount of faith from the talent. Obviously, Tony goes without saying, and also the process that we cast the whole of the pilot, that the key ensemble cast all came on board without scripts and without even really a character arc, because it was just a kind of leap of faith and trust based on Tony writing The Favourite.
Yeah.
I think people were so enamored by the brilliance of also the representation of women, that they just took that leap of faith, and it's, you know, come to fruition. So Gillian and Tony then connected and talked about her and what that role would be like, and he's just a very reassuring human being. I mean, I would probably play a role if he asked me to play a role. I do not like acting. I do not like acting. That's how much trust there is, I think.
I think that was
so brilliant at writing women, which is
it's just
such you know, is such a triumph.
Yeah, you can't. I certainly cannot binge The Great. I have to savor every episode so dearly because every line is so perfect. He's just such a great writer.
The economy of writing is brilliant.
Oh, brilliant. So there was a really fantastic creation. I'm hoping you can remember it. It's early on in season 2, the Ottoman ambassador played by Raphael Alcock. I can't even say his name.
Raphael,
but yeah, brilliant, sarcastic, obnoxious twerp, gifts a horse to Catherine, patronizes all of. Everything about him was brilliant, and then of course he's over. It's over and done with after an episode. You also have the Sultan in the series finale, played by Billy Postlethwaite. They're really great opportunities to bring something new on season 2. So, how much do you appreciate being able to bring, you know, foreigners into the court?
Love it, love it. Both of those are examples of actors that I'd come up against or on other projects and just really wanted to play somewhere, and these were opportunities, and Tony responded to them. So it was exciting, and actually Billy's an example of somebody who jumped in really late in the day, and might have been thought to be a bit young. Had it been discussed early on, should he be more mature, etc., etc. And I know they were absolutely thrilled with him. So that was one of those triumphs where just timing permits and you get something great. The other person that was interesting to cast in season 2 was Julian Barrett, because obviously we were replacing Jamie Demetriou to some degree, who'd been the Doctor in the first season, and he was exploding with all his brilliant writing and his stuff, and it was exciting to have people like that in the first series. So for him to kind of move on, it had to be somebody equally as wonderful and kind of clever and multifaceted. So it was a real coup for us as casting to kind of marry Julian in, who's completely different and separate, but at the same time it didn't feel like you'd lost anything.
Yeah. Oh, he's so good.
Gained. Yeah.
So damn good. You know, in this genre, like shows like Bridgerton and Dickinson, and of course The Great, colorblind casting has become, you know, the norm in this. You know, we're looking at a particular period of time in a particular location, and it doesn't really matter. And I just wonder, and I think this show was probably at the forefront of that. How do you? Obviously, you feel quite strongly about it because you've been doing it, but what are your thoughts on the colorblind casting? You know, the character of Olaf, for example, Sacha Dhawan, he's so freaking brilliant, and it doesn't matter that he comes from a different ethnic background. Talk me through that challenge.
Yeah, so I've sort of trained and been brought up in casting to involve as much diversity and always question generally the absence. And equally so, often we would say to Tony, you know, could this person, this footman, this soldier, this character actually be a woman? And he was equally responsive. So it's always been to try and broaden the horizons and challenge the thinking. And obviously Tony and the show were massively on board that. So that was an open field from the outset, and we knew that. And so then it was just a matter of best man for the job and making sure that the coverage was there. And And yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? I don't think I could even think about it without that sort of openness. And as you pointed out, it predated even Black Lives Matter, which obviously in the industry there was a huge kind of sensibility towards, and conversations have been going on for years, and there'd been major shifts. But it's so to be a part of the great, and then for that to kind of really shift the goalposts has been thrilling. I don't know if that really answers the question.
It does. I mean, to be you're one of the pioneers of that particular kind of casting, if I may say. And I just think I can't imagine now watching a period drama without seeing people from all backgrounds and different, in both genders, playing certain roles. If it wasn't that way these days, it would look odd. And I think that's actually super cool. I mean, that's a great place to be in, don't you think? Finally.
Yeah, and particularly on a show like this, where the writing and the irreverence and the fact that it's, you know, it's as it always says, it's kind of partially based on history, allows that in a way that doesn't feel too contrived. You know, I do know that lots of diverse Black actors feel that really strongly, and I completely respond to that we need more stories about their culture and their history, rather than just putting actors into white history and white stories. There was something about this show that it was already kind of about humans and humanness and human nature, rather than about sticking to history. And also being conceived by Australian, I think even made that wider. It's so culturally and irreverent, and being about women and all the rest, that it meant that the casting just unquestionably
followed that. There's just like no rules. Let's make something really interesting and dynamic and engaging. That's exactly what you've all done. Congrats on an amazing season 2. Good luck for season 3. I know you've got a lot of work ahead of you. Thank you so much for your time today, Dixie.
Thank you. Very nice to speak to you.